Ah, shit. Here we go again.
All right, y'all. So me and my homeboy Calvin end up getting in the same cell together. So I end up getting the top rack, and I know what y'all thinking. Y'all gonna be like, "Oh, Dante, I thought you said, got weaker guys got to get the top rack." Hold on, pump y'all brakes. So my homeboy Calvin, he had a bad back. So me and him being homeboys from the street, I let him get the bottom rack. Ain't no thing. But yeah, y'all all right though. Usually, if it ain't no crazy, intimidation tactics going on, usually the guy that get the bottom bunk usually is the one that's controlling, if that's the dynamics in the cell. But anyway, so Calvin got the bottom bunk and I got the top bunk, and we chopping it up or whatever. And he like, "Hey, Dante, you remember that girl Tiffany?" I said, Tiffany, what Tiffany?" He said, "Tiffany that went to Southwestern." I said, "Tiffany went to Southwestern?" He said, "Yeah." He was like, I said, "Yeah." He said, "The dark skinned chick." I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, Tiffany." "Oh, Tiffany." He was like, "Yeah, she work here." I said, "Get out of here." He was like, "Yeah, no cap. She work here." I said, "Man, I had a crush on her since." He said, "But listen, though, one of the homies said from Jackson that she get down, like you pay her a little something, she'll break you off." So I was like, "Tiffany doing that?" He was like, "Yeah, bro." I said, "Did you hit?" He was like, nah, but I heard that she about to get transferred over here in our dorm." I was like, "Oh, okay." Now normally when I hear things like that, I'm like, "Yeah, all right, man," because y'all know how it is in prison. These dudes always coming up with these miraculous stories and you know things like that. So I'm thinking to myself like, "Yeah, all right, I believe it and I see it or whatever." Right? 2 days later, and I done forgot all about this, whatever. 2 days later, right? I'm coming from the shower. When I come out the shower, who do I see sitting there in the control booth? It's Tiffany. Man, my heart stopped. Now, I'm going to give y'all a little backstory about Tiffany. Now, Tiffany was this dark skinned chocolate chick, right? I ain't going to lie. I had a little crush on her back in the day. It wasn't nothing. It wasn't nothing, right? But me and her was cool. It wasn't like we dated or anything, or we messed around. There was a lot of chicks that I thought was attractive, but that don't mean I pushed up on them. Now hold on, for any of y'all out there that be talking about, "Oh, Dante was scared to talk to this chick." Let me tell y'all something. Number one, I'm married. Okay, so I've been out the game for 12 years. All right, but outside of that, prior to me being married, you understand me? I might didn't know how to do a push up, but I knew how to push up on a chick. And that's facts. But anyway. Hey, do me a favor, y'all. Hit the like button. Also, before we continue this story, if you are watching this video and you didn't get my notification, make sure you unsubscribe to the channel, subscribe back to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because YouTube changes algorithm and is not sending out my notifications. But that's how you do it. Now hit that like button and share the video. But anyway, so I see her and I just got my towel on and I like lock eyes with it, and she looked at me and she smirked. So at this time, y'all, Dante was built like an Olympian god, right? The arms was right, the chest was right. You know what I'm saying? I had the chiseled jaw. Dante was in shape. So, she seen the little six pack right there, the triceps and all that. So, I flexed just a little bit. So I said, okay. So then I went up there to myself. So Calvin was already in there. I said, "Calvin." He said, "I already know. I told you she here. I told you." I said, "Man, all right, give me a minute." So he left out the cell. Anyway, let me put a pause right there right quick. Okay. If you find yourself in prison, all right, this is what you call cell etiquette, right? So basically what cell etiquette is, when you get out if you come in the room and you naked and you about to get dressed, Your cellmate need to get up out that cell unless y'all on like a lockdown or whatever. But he need to get out that cell and give you your personal time and vice versa, right? So he leave out, right? And I'm in there getting dressed. So I'm like, dang. Now at this time, y'all, I've been locked up for maybe we gonna say my 11th month in. 11 month in, right? So I'm just thinking, I said, dang, that is Tiffany. She looked the same, just older, man. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting on homeboy bed at this time, but he wasn't really tripping. So I'm sitting on his bed, and the next thing you know, I get a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Guess who it is, y'all? It's Tiffany. I said, yeah. She was like, I'm about to come in. So she opened the door. She walked in. She was like, Donta, I knew that was you. Now, I'm going to be real with y'all. Now, I ain't trying to, turn this to no freaked out story or whatever, but, y'all just got to bear with me. Y'all here for the story, right? Now, chill out. So anyway, I said, what's up, Tiffany? She was like, so how long you been here? I said, man, it's about 10, 11 months. She was like, oh, okay. Well, it's nice to see you. I said, hey, Tiff, can I get a hug? She was like, yeah. Now, she walked up to me and I stood up and, hey, I'm going to be real with y'all. The towel dropped and, you know what I mean? The towel dropped. She looked down and she was like, oh, my. And I said, yeah. And I just gave her a hug just like that. Now, before y'all, I already know. A lot of y'all going to be saying cap and all this and that. But, hey, it is what it is. Y'all can say whatever y'all want to say. Y'all wasn't there with me. Ain't nobody that was locked up with me gonna come out and say otherwise. So it is what it is, all right? So y'all can cut all that nonsense out, right? And the reason why I'm telling y'all this story right now is because Calvin told me, he said he don't care. He said, man, Donta, I don't even care, man. It don't even matter. I don't care. You can tell the story, whatever. Because y'all thinking this story is about me. Oh, no, it ain't about me. It's about Calvin, right? So, I give her the hug and, she feel that sword of justice down there, right? And she was like, oh, my. And I said, yeah, that's all me, right? So we hugged. And, y'all got to understand, man, I ain't touched a woman almost, 12 months at that point. So it is what it is. So she gave me the hug and she let go. And I was like, hey, you working tonight shift? She was like, no, but I'm going to be here tomorrow morning. I said, all right, bet, right? So she walked out the cell. And I put my boxers on, put my deodorant on, brushed my teeth, put my lotion on, and got dressed. And Calvin, he was like, hey, you ready? You done? I said, yeah. He said, man, what's up? What happened? I said, shoot, I just gave her a hug. He was like, so what she say? Like, is she down? I said, no, I didn't ask her. And he was like, man, find out. I said, hold on, why you ain't saying that? He was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to, shoot, you don't want to know her like that. I said, man, you know her too, or whatever. So he was like, all right. So the next morning come, right? It's count time. She's not there at all. So I'm like, dang, when's she gonna come in, right? So nothing really eventful happened right now throughout the day. So we just gonna skip to 8 o'clock when shift change happened, right? So the night crew was coming in, right? And usually, they'll now this was on a Saturday, right? And they usually let us stay out to about 11 or midnight if you got the cool guards. Or other than that, we supposed to be locked down at 9 o'clock, right? But anyway, we had the cool guard on staff. I ain't gonna put his name out there because he's still working, but she shows up. Tiffany shows up. It's her in the night guard or whatever. So I'm like, bet, right? But now hold on. Before we go any further, let me put this out there too. It's a lot of dudes that be hating. A whole lot of buster dudes out there be hating. And one would think, well, hey, if Donta getting all this attention, somebody gonna try to drop a kite and let the captain know, like, hey, y'all need to watch Donta and that new guard Tiffany because they might be doing something. Dudes to drop a kite on you quick and hate on you. But I knew that, understood that. So anyway, I always find myself by the control booth talking to her, right? And we just chopping it up about the past or whatever. And, I just straight out asked, I said, hey, Tiff, man, let me ask you a question, right? She was like, what's up? I said, I'm gonna be real. You let me get that? And she was like, get what? And I was like, you know what I'm talking about. She was like, boy, stop playing. What you hear? I said, I ain't hear nothing. What you mean? She was like, no, cause you want to just come out and say that. I said, I'm just speaking for myself. And she was like, man, what did you hear? I said, I ain't hear nothing. She was like, all right. So yeah, I'll give you some. I said, when? And she was like, whenever you want it. I said, man, stop playing, right? So she was like, I ain't playing. Whenever you want it. I said, I'll give you something tonight. She was like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll see. I said, all right. So I walked off, right? Calvin rolled up to the control booth, right? And they talking. So as I'm walking around the day room, right? I'm hitting my laps. I do about 30 laps. And after this is my regimen. I hit 5 laps. Every time I get by the phones, I drop down, do 20 push-ups, do 5 more laps, drop down, do 20 push-ups. And that's my routine to tire myself out so I can get a good night rest, right? So I'm doing my laps around, right? And I see Calvin over there smiling, right? So then Calvin come to me. Now, we had a cell phone. Now, I ain't going to tell y'all where we kept it at, but we had a cell phone. Calvin was like, hey, D, I'm about to go use the jack. Look out for me. I said, all right. So he goes and go get it. And, I'm standing outside the door. I'm like, yo, what's up? What's going on? He was like, yeah, I'm about to send that through. I said, send what through? He said, yeah, she charged $100 a hit. I said, $100 a hit? He was like, yeah, she's about to go down. I said, oh, okay. So in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, so he paying for it, but I'm going to get it for free, so I ain't tripping, right? So he send the money to her in a cash app or whatever, and he go back down there and they discuss whatever they discuss. Now, this dude named Andrew from Detroit, he rolls up on me, and he like, hey, Donta, man, I'm going to just go ahead and let you know, bro. I said, what's up? He said, hey, man, Tiff, man, she burning. She burning, dog. And I said, man, what you mean she burning? Now, I'm thinking he hating. I'm thinking he just over here to blow my spot up and try to make something seem like, that this girl got something or whatever, and he ain't looking out for me. He just trying to move in on his own or whatever. So I'm listening to him like, all right, man, whatever. But then he said something else. He was like, hey, you remember Jay Bark? Now, Jay Bark was this, where was he at? Where was he from? He was from Kalamazoo. Jay Bark was from Kalamazoo. And Jay Bark just got transferred, right? So he was like, yeah, I'm a call Jay Bark, he'll tell you. So we go to his room and he called him up on the phone, right? And Jay Bark, he like, yeah, man, I don't know you like that, but hey, bro, check this out. Tiffany, she burning and she giving dudes crabs. I said, man, get out of here. He was like, yeah, bro, I'm for real, man. She giving dudes crabs. That's why she got transferred. I said, you for real? He said, man, dog. I said, well, how you know that for sure? He was like, because it happened to me. It happened to me, man. I said, man, get out of here. He said, all right, bro. I mean, it is what it is. I said, all right, good looking out, right? So I had it in my head like, you know what? Man, I ain't gonna touch it. I'm gonna leave it alone. So I end up going to my homeboy Cal. I said, hey, Cal, I need to holler at you right quick. He like, what's up? I said, oh, come over here right quick. Now, Tiffany was coming out the control booth, and she was signaling him to come over there, right? He like, man, watch out, Donta. I said, no, dog, I need to really talk to you like right now. He like, man, can it wait, man? I said, all right, man, all right, whatever. Then he walked up. I said, man, Cap. And I said, man, there, man, forget it. So he goes down there and he go with her. Now, this was her setup, right? So she would act like they about to go get some stuff out of the cleaning closet, whatever, which is outside of the dorm. So she signaled for him to go. So basically, her setup was that you send her the $100 somehow, some way, y'all end up outside of the dorm and go to the broom closet, and you got maybe 1 or 2 minutes to get it on, right? So that was the setup. That was the program. So They went in there, they did what they did. Now we gonna put a pause right there because I know a lot of y'all like, Donta, you dead wrong. Donta, why you ain't stopped the homie? Why you ain't just tell him, yo, she got this, she got that? Why Donta didn't do it? I'm gonna tell y'all why. Y'all ever heard that expression? A hard head make a soft ass. Y'all remember that? Now, imagine this. This dude been locked up for maybe about 2, 3 years already. Ain't touched a woman, ain't smelt a woman, right? And here go his chance. He already sent the money off to her. He finna go get him some. And here go Donta, right? Donta that already got prior history with this chick. I never messed with her or nothing, but I got prior history with this chick, and I'm telling him right at the moment of him about to go down there and get him some, like, no, don't do it because I heard she got crabs, or I heard that she burned or whatever. He gonna look at me like I'm crazy. He gonna like, man, Donta, why you hating? And so I said, you know what? I mean, I tried to warn him, but he kept walking off, and hey, it is what it is, right? Do me a favor, y'all, and let's keep it a buck. Shout out to Philly. Let's keep it a bean, right? Let's keep it a bean. Do y'all think Donta was wrong for not like grabbing him and telling like, yo, don't do it because she got A, B, Z, and D, right? And I didn't know 100%. You know, I'm taking the word from another felon, another convict, right? That this woman got A, B, C, and D or whatever. But y'all let me know in the comment section, do y'all think Donta wrong? Also, check this out. I got to give a special shout out to my home girl, Eva. And I got to give a special shout out to my people, the Garcia family. Shout out to y'all. That's from your big partner, Donta. Thank y'all for y'all support. I appreciate y'all. So let's get back to the story, y'all. So he ended up going to the closet with her, and they do what they do, whatever. He come in, right? And you can tell, dude Calvin, you could tell maybe it was gone for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops. He come back on weak-legged. He like all exhausted. He just walked past me. He just go in the room and just lay down. I said, so how was it? He said, man, bruh. And he just turned on his side and went to bed. Right? So I come out the room and I look straight down there, right? And I see her take another guy, right? Another guy. It was maybe 4 guys that she took, right? So I said, okay, it's on. So I'm like, okay. So now I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, I ain't gonna touch her. I ain't gonna touch her because I know she ain't using condoms. But then I just went over there. I said, hey, bro, y'all use protection? And he was like, man, what protection? I said, oh, okay. Right. How can you blame homie? But anyway, so I'm thinking in my head, I already had my mind made up like, yeah, I ain't going to touch her. But then I thought about something else. I'm like, well, this is a way for me to make some money. I mean, I'm the only one that really know her like that. So I'm going to just pull up on her and be like, hey, let me just manage what you got going on. You know, I ain't talking about being a pimp, but I mean, y'all can call it whatever y'all want to call it. But I was just going to tell her, like, look, let me set these, you know, altercations up, you know, and let me just get a percentage of it. So I already had that in my head going on, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to see what she go for it, right? About, I'm going to say 20 minutes to go by, right? And they lock down the pile. All right, y'all, it's time to go in. Everybody go to your rooms, blah, 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 blah. Right? So everybody head to their rooms and, you know, dude is asleep, right? So the next day they had us on lockdown. They wouldn't tell us why. They just told her, yo, y'all in yourselves for the day. And, you know, sometimes they just do that just to mess with us. You know, we convicts, you know, according to what the 13th amendment or whatever, one of them Constitution amendments, we slaves anyway. Once you become a prisoner, you a slave anyway. So you ain't got to explain nothing to us, right? Right. So we in there and homeboy, like, hey, Dante, man, something ain't right. I'm like, what you mean ain't something right? He said, I don't know, man. I just don't feel right down there. I'm like, man, I ain't no doctor, man. What he like, man, could you like kind of check? I said, man, I'm not about to look at you, homeboy, man. You better hit that button and try to get to the infirmary or whatever. He like, man, I said, what, you feel like you burning or something? He said, no, it ain't that I'm burning, but I don't know, I'm like itching or whatever. Maybe she had like some special powder on or something, and I don't know. I said, well, you did go in raw, right? He said, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I said, all right, man, don't sweat, man. It's, just sleep it off or whatever. Go over there and go take a bird bath, whatever. So he was like, all right, man, I'm gonna just go to sleep again, right? So he slept all day, right? So it had to been about maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and he like, man, oh man, I said, what's up with you, man? He was like, man, bro, hey, you know what, man, I got like these little spiders down here. Like, man, you got some, have any spiders been crawling on you? I said, hell no. He said, man, I got like these little spiders over here in my area. I'm like, spiders? And he like, yeah. I said, like on the bed sheet or what? He like, no, bro, it's like down there. I said, down there? He said, yeah. I said, hey, I don't know, bro. I don't, spiders wouldn't do that. Like, he said, man, I was just combing through my, man, and I said, bro, I think you got crabs, homeboy. He said, what? I said, yeah, I think you got crabs, homie. He was like, man, what you mean? I said, hey, I said, you remember the other day when I was telling you, like, yo, let me talk to you before you ran down there? He was like, yeah. I said, that's what I was trying to tell you. Old dude from Kalamazoo told me on the phone, like, he gave her that. I mean, she gave him that, and I was trying to tell you, but he was like, man, bro, what you mean? I said, hey, what, you would have listened? He was like, nah, but man, no, man, F that, right? So about 4 hours, because we had 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. count time, right? So he's standing out there. We out there, because, at 6 o'clock, you got to have that bed made. You got to be standing out front or you will be locked down again. Right? So we out there doing, he out there grabbing at himself and just itching and all that. But I see some other guys doing the same thing too. So, and I noticed these were the same guys that was messing with her too. So I'm like, oh man, yep. So long story short, they all end up going to the infirmary and, getting checked out, and they didn't blow the spot up, and they ain't, tell on her or whatever. They kept it G or whatever, but they end up getting the cream or whatever, and whatever happened with that. But you know what? This kind of remind me of a Bible story. Now I know a lot of y'all was like, yo, Dante, we love that Sodom and Gomorrah story that you told, but we want to hear another Bible story. Okay, well, I'm gonna give y'all 2 stories of one. Now this story right here is about when King David did what he did with Bathsheba. Now, the point of me telling y'all this story is about being in a place that you should not be in. You know what I mean? When you're supposed to be somewhere, but you end up being somewhere else. Now, for those that don't know the King David and Bathsheba story, so basically it was the time of war. It was the season of war, when the kings go out and, they go to war or whatever. But King David decided to say, you know what? Nah, I ain't going out. I ain't going out with the men to go to war. I'm just going to kick it. I'm going to just chill. Some of you guys out there that, supposed to be going to work, but y'all decide to take the day off and go chill with some chick that y'all had no business chilling with. Yes, like that, right? So King David like, nah, I'm just gonna chill at the castle and just chill, right? So remember, he's supposed to be out there going to war, but he at the castle chilling, right? So anyway, as he walking on his balcony, he look across and he see this woman bad chick. I'm talking about bad. And, she's bathing, and first he looks away, like, okay, let me not be, freaky. But then he looked back again, and he can't stop watching. So he sees it, he like, man, she is fine. So first he wrestled with it at first, and he like, nah, I ain't gone. But then he said, man, hold up. I'm King David. I'm about to, man, let me, man, I got all this power, man. I'm about to. So he summoned a couple of his guards, like, hey, go to that house and tell this chick that at that house to, come through right quick. So nevertheless, he sends the guards out, and the guards go out and they knock on the door. Hey, this the with the guards of David, he wants you to come to the castle. And she like, what do he want? They like, we don't know, but just come. She said, okay, I'm gonna obey the king. So she get dressed and she come on up there, She waiting, and King David bring her to the bedroom, and he sit her down, and he like, do you want something to drink? You want some wine or something? Want something to eat, some grapes or, some boiled chicken or something? She like, no, that's okay. How can I help you, King? And he like, well, I ain't gonna lie, man. I seen you from across the way, yeah, man. You bad. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, man. I want you. And she like, well, I am married. And he like, you married? She like, yeah. He like, man, dang. But your man ain't me, basically. And she is like, okay. And he like, man, look, I'm gonna be real with you. I want to drop this heavy D off into you. And she like, okay, I guess we can do it. So, King David, pull up on her, he lay her down, and then he proceeded to drop heavy D off in him. On top of that, he didn't even use no condom, no protection at all, right? So he busts all up in her and then send her home. Couple months go by, and she saying word like, yo, I'm pregnant. And he like, what you mean you pregnant? And she like, I'm pregnant. And you the daddy. I mean, my husband is a warrior in your army, and he out there in war. And so King David like, well, who is he? He said, it's Uriah. He said, whoa, who? Yeah, my husband and Uriah. He like, man, it's one of my best soldiers. All right, this what we gonna do. This how we gonna cover this up. I'm gonna send for Uriah, right? And I'm gonna have him send him from the battlefield so he can be with you, so he can have sex with you, so we can cover this up, so it can be his baby. So she said, all right. So he sent word, and Uriah came. And he said, King David, put the word out like, yo, spend time with your wife or whatever. But Uriah was a stand-up G. Uriah was a stand-up, 10 toes down, man of all men. He said, hey, man, check this out. No disrespect, King David. But, yo, the man, I can't be out here having sex with my wife and laid up when my brothers in arms is out there fighting these battles. I can't do it, man. I'm just gonna stay here by the gate. I'm not even going to my home when my brothers out there laying their life down. I need to be out there. So King David is like, dang. All right, I gotta do something about this. So King David said, all right, this what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send him back to the war zone, but I'm gonna put him on the front lines, right, where the battle is most fierce, where he's almost sure to die, right? So he sent him on out his way. The commanders put Uriah on the front line. Now, as they fight in this war, right, a signal was given to withdraw away from Uriah, guaranteeing that he's going to get killed, right? So as they fighting, the signal was given, and the men start backing away from Uriah, and he get killed. So at this time, when King David heard about it, he sent for Bathsheba to come stay, in the spot with him, right? In the palace, in the kingdom, right? Gave her a nice room and everything. So, okay, I'm going to take care of the baby, right? I'm going to take care of the baby. You ain't got to worry about nothing, right? King David was on some real nigga shit, right? So anyway, and y'all do me a favor, hit that like button too. So and if y'all like the way I tell these Bible stories, I get a lot of feedback of people telling me, hey, yo, Donta, the way you be telling these Bible stories, man, hey, I know y'all, I do it for y'all. But anyway, so, a prophet came in and said, hey, King David, I need to holler at you about something. So the prophet basically told him, told him a little story that was about him. And he asked King David, like, yo, what would you do to this person that, did this violation? And King David basically said, man, off with his head and all that, right? And the prophet ended up telling him, like, well, this story is about you. God knows what you did. And King David's like, oh, man, right? So the prophet also told King David that this was going to happen. That baby of yours, that baby, Bathsheba baby, I'm taking his life. For what you did, I'm taking that baby's life. For what you did. You see, you supposed to been out there fighting. It's a season where the kings go to war. But instead you stay here. And then lust came into your heart and you had sex with this man's wife and bore a child. Not only did you do that, you sent him to the fiercest part of the battle of the war and got that man killed. So you know what? This baby ain't going to be able to live. So what did King David do? He was crying. He put on sackcloth. He said he was pleading that God wouldn't take the baby, right? But God wasn't trying to hear that at all. And he ended up taking the baby life. The point of me telling y'all this story is this, especially for you men out there, especially you black men out there. I'm really talking to my black brothers out there, right? Our job as a man is to work. The Bible says that in the beginning, God did not cause it to rain in the garden because there was no man to till the land. That right there lets me know that our first job as a human being, as a man, is to work. They say if you don't work, you don't eat. So our first job is to work. And there's a lot of cats out here that, they go get a job working for 2 weeks. When they get their first check, they ain't showing up no more. Or you got a job and you just don't feel like going today, so you duck off and go to the strip club, drop Heavy D off into one of these strippers and catch gonorrhea or something worse. And then you come back, you bring it to your girlfriend, and then, oop, there it is, right? You men better start being where y'all supposed to be. Haven't y'all noticed when people ain't where they supposed to be? This when all the trouble happens. This why I don't go out. This why I don't go to strip clubs. This why I don't even go to the club. Here go right here. Breaking news. Big YouTuber Donta gets shot in the ass, right? At some club. I ain't supposed to be there anyway. You know what I mean? So always be where you supposed to be when you be there, right? Be where you supposed to be when you supposed to be there. And with that, y'all, shout out to the Garcia family. Shout out to Eva. And shout out to the most electrifying commentators, viewership people that's a part of the Donta Show Network. And I want to give a special shout out to all my members also. And everybody that hit the like button and everybody that shares the videos. And with that, y'all, I'm out. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit that like button for me. Also, if you like stories like this, make sure you check out Stacy's Storytime.
Stacy's Storytime.
I'll have her link pinned at the top of the comment section. Make sure y'all go check her out. If you want to continue to show your support for the Donta Show Network, make sure you send your weekly donation to our Cash App, our PayPal, and our Zelle. It is highly appreciated. Until next time, take care.